right, we're back on the record after a short break to switch witnesses, and now the next witness that the complainant is calling is Brian Gusky. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, under threat of possible perjury charges if you were not to tell the truth? You understand that?
Yes.
Can you agree to do that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. State your name and spell it for the record, please.
Brian, Brian, Gusky, Gustke.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gusky. And then you may begin your direct, please, Mr. Cross.
Right. Mr. Gusky, have you ever been employed by the Department of Corrections?
Yes, I have.
Okay. What are you employed there now?
I am not.
Okay. What was the last job that you held at the Department of Corrections?
The last job I held with the Department of Corrections was with probation and parole.
And what was that job title?
Probation agent.
Okay. Do you know Sue Novak?
Yes, I do.
How do you know Sue Novak?
Sue was my boss when I was the security director at Columbia Correctional Institution. She was the warden.
Okay. And let me ask that another way. So, are you aware of an escape that happened while Sue Novak was the warden at Columbia?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And that was, you were also the security director at that time?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And while you were the security director, I guess let's start with, does Columbia Correctional Facility have a fence?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And are you aware at the time of the escape whether the fence was operational?
At the time of the escape, to my knowledge, yes, it was operational.
Okay. Was it, I guess to put it another way, because was this fence installed improperly?
Yes, it was installed improperly.
Okay. And how did you come to know that the fence was installed improperly?
Prior to that, at some point in time in my employment at Columbia Correctional Institution, I had made mention it to, at the time then, the deputy warden, Lucas Weber, that I had noticed that. And he was previously the security director prior to me becoming the security director at Columbia. Anyway, I reported it to him, and he said, yeah, he was fully aware of it too, that he had made mention to of this as well to individuals when he was a security director. He also said that there was a security audit that was completed, I don't know, 3 to 4 years prior to that, that identified that the fence was installed correctly and essentially backwards. And that would have been administrators were made aware of that as well.
Okay. And
we have no time frames for any of this, so this isn't helpful.
No, I appreciate that, Judge. Well, so the suggestion she's giving us, Mr. Gusky, is that now we're going to go and try to narrow down the time frame of when those events happened. Okay.
Okay.
So let's focus on the security audit. Do you know when that security audit happened?
I do not. I know it was done prior to my employment at Columbia Correctional Institution.
Well, then let's start with that date. Do you know when did you start your employment at Columbia?
I started, I believe it was end of March, early April of 2019.
Okay. And then this security audit, do you understand that that was given to management above the rank of warden?
That's what I was.
Max personal knowledge.
Sustained.
Okay. Well, what?
That answer is out.
Okay. What were you told about this security audit?
By who?
By, well, you only person spoke to one person about the security audit. Isn't that right? the person who was the previous security director.
I'm going to make the same
Correct.
objection, Judge. He has no personal knowledge of any of this, so I'm not sure how he can testify to the details of it and who spoke about it and who was aware of it. He just doesn't have that knowledge.
Yes, unless you get a better foundation, this is just sketchy.
Okay, we're working on it. And so we all realize you're not a professional witness, so we'll just take your answers as best as we get them, and if we need to be clear, we'll be clear. So, again, can you remind us who told you about the security audit?
Lucas Weber, the deputy warden.
Okay, and approximately when did you have this conversation with Mr. Weber?
Probably within a couple of months of my employment at Columbia Correctional Institution.
Okay. Do you think that was prior to November of 2019?
Yes.
Okay. And there's another significant event there where there was a injury to a correctional officer at Columbia. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. Was this conversation happen before or after that injury?
Before.
Or assault, I guess I should say. Okay, before. And so what was your understanding of the purpose of the security audit as it was explained to you by Mr. Weber?
I'm going to object again. Lacks personal knowledge and speculation.
Sustained, do we have this security audit? I mean, there should be
You
a
mean the
paperwork
document
for
itself?
this.
No.
Huh?
No.
And are we going to have someone who's actually seen this document testify about it?
We can.
Well, then let's have somebody who's seen it and actually can testify knowledgeably about it, rather than someone who's telling me hearsay about what somebody else told them. So no.
And
I
just
think-
to be clear, Judge, you're excluding this, the concept of this security audit based on the fact that it's hearsay?
Yes, because it is not, it's speculation. Basically, you're doing discovery. This is the kind of question you would ask in discovery, and then you would hunt down Mr. Lucas or hunt down this document, find out who had it, and actually have people testify to me about who really knew about it. This is not a witness who can tell me anything about it other than what he's heard other people say. This is not knowledge I can rely on to make any decision. So no.
Okay, and we're all clear that that's not a basis to exclude that.
I don't believe you're correct, and I am excluding it as basically not reliable, insufficient information. I'm not wasting my time either on what should have been done during discovery. No.
Yeah, see, but that's also not a grounds to exclude evidence that
It
your
is.
personal
It is, in
belief
my
that something
opinion,
could
I have a
been
right
dis-
to
Excuse me, Judge, I'm
control.
trying to make my objection here.
Okay,
You're
fine. Make your thing, but it's not going to go on long.
I'm sorry, what? I'm
You
trying to make
cannot
an
go on
objection and
for-
you're communicating to me, so it's hard for me to understand while I'm making an objection.
You can make an objection, but
I'm
it
trying
cannot
to,
go
yes.
on for beyond 2 minutes, because otherwise you just filibuster. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, again, what we're talking about here is you're making an evidentiary decision ahead of knowing what the actual fact is. You are just deciding to exclude evidence based on the presupposition that, or I guess what you're saying is hearsay. Again, hearsay is expressly admitted in these proceedings. And there's also, you're using the concept of potential discovery as a new standard of relevance. And that there's nowhere in 902 does it say that somebody could have discovered something, so therefore it's irrelevant. So that's not a legal argument, and we need to be clear on that for the record here, because again, what you're saying is, though we could have discovered everything, and because, again, as there was no discovery conducted by the other side or by us, then therefore we shouldn't have any hearings because everything could have been discovered.
That's not what I'm saying, but at this case, that's the
quickly.
potential to have go on forever, because we're talking to somebody who's not, Mr. Gusky, have you ever seen this document?
I mean, we're not trying to get this document in through this individual.
I
what
wanna
we're trying
know
to do
if
is
he's ever
whether
seen
he
this
was told
document.
and knew about it, and whether
No.
or not he was aware that
No.
management was aware of this document.
No, we're not gonna do that unless you can prove it actually exists and somebody did it. Him saying that he heard about it, he may legitimately believe that this is true, but that doesn't mean it is true, because it may be that he's a misunderstanding or misremembering his conversation with Mr. Lucas. I do not know what, that I can rely on this testimony based on how you're presenting it. This witness does not have the knowledge, Mr. Gusky.
I do not recall personally seeing this document, but this document in my own hearing when I was terminated from Columbia came up. It was referenced, and the person, Secretary Carr, who fired me, totally pushed it off, saying that administrators or individuals prior to him were made aware of it. Therefore, it wasn't his problem in the end.
Okay, so that's something
So
we
he
could use.
acknowledged- he
I'm
acknowledged
gonna
that.
allow that, because that's him telling you something that Mr. Carr, Secretary Carr actually said. So go ahead. If you want to go on that, that's
No,
fine.
I understand. And so this is just so we don't have to pause your testimony, Mr. Gusky, and get Mr. Weber in here for that sake. But I understand. So you were terminated from Columbia, correct?
Yes, I was.
Okay, and I'm sorry to hear that. Let's say, did you have any contact with Warden Carr in the course of your termination?
Secretary Carr, he's the secretary of the Department of Corrections.
Yeah.
In my termination, no, I had my letter of termination that referenced that, because I also utilized that in my defense when I was appealing my termination.
Okay, and so in the course of that discipline, you were able to give your side of the story, correct?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and then during that time, did you mention the security audit?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and were you still disciplined irrespective of the security audit?
I'm going to object to relevance. Whether he was disciplined or not is just not relevant in this case.
Don't allow.
So I can answer?
Yes,
Correct.
please go ahead. Thank you.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I got it right.
Yeah, I'm sorry there. You were disciplined despite the fact that you informed Secretary Carr of the existence of the security audit, correct?
I was disciplined and terminated. And in my defense, yes, I had brought up the security audit because one of the things that I was terminated on was my alleged failure to take notice or bring forth the defense issue of it being improperly installed.
Okay. And now you told, I guess you told Mr. Weber about your knowledge of the fence. Did you tell anybody other than Mr. Weber about your knowledge of the fence?
I do not believe so.
Okay. And did you explain to department, or I guess you were investigated by Internal Affairs, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you explain to Internal Affairs that you had talked to Mr. Weber about this fence?
Yes.
Okay. And you were still disciplined, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And now, are you aware of any Department of Correction employees assisting in the escape?
I have some knowledge and understanding that there was a kitchen employee, but I don't have the full details of that investigation because at the time, I believe it was almost 2 weeks to the date after the escape happened, I was put out on administrative leave pending the investigation and had no prior or no former or no further knowledge other than what I was able to obtain via media coverage of the event.
Okay, so good. I want to clarify that then. So let's exclude all that, the knowledge that you got secondhand. Did you have any knowledge of the kitchen worker connection prior to the escape?
Yeah, on the day of the escape during the investigation, I guess the start of the investigation, we became aware of Holly Zimdahl was the kitchen employee, and there was a search of her vehicle done in the parking lot of the correctional institution, and in there there was I forget what, $1,300 or $1,400 cash found in there. She had a little folded up piece of paper that had a note from one of the inmates or both of the inmates that escaped, explaining or type of tools or wire cutters, and I believe there was a couple other details surrounding the escape or how to help them escape that was found in her vehicle as well.
Okay, and do you know how that search came to be conducted?
It was done with the approval of, at the time, then Warden Sue Novak. She gave us, essentially myself or the captain at the time, Captain Kevin Pitson, access to search her vehicle. We spoke to Miss Zimdahl, and she gave us permission then to go into her vehicle and search the vehicle, providing us her keys to do it.
Okay. So you searched, excuse me for talking over, but you searched the vehicle on the instructions of Warden Novak. Was that right?
I personally did not search it. No, but she gave permission. I had one of my investigative captain at the time then search it. I did go out there and observed portions of the search and became aware of the items that they found. Okay.
And then did you report those items to anybody?
Yes. Then I reported it to Miss Novak, Mr. Weber, and then I do believe they reported it on up to their chain of command as well. Okay.
Why do you believe that?
I don't remember if I was exactly in the room or not, but I know it was reported. That's something to that significance. It's going to get reported to everybody that needs to know, including law enforcement who was present on the grounds at the time.
Okay. And then, because I don't have a complete understanding of that, but there is a separation between correctional officers and law enforcement officers. Is that right?
Yes, there is.
Okay. And if there is a criminal matter that takes place at a correctional institution, the correctional officers have to call police officers to, or I guess I should say law enforcement officers, to investigate that. Is that right?
Yes.
I guess at this point I would object. We're sort of getting into unnecessary information here. We're going pretty far afield of what the allegations are.
What is the point of us doing this, please?
I want to understand why how significant law enforcement being there is.
I don't know how that has anything to do with the discipline.
Well, apparently law enforcement was there before the escape. So I want to know in what capacity they were there before the escape, and what purpose was it for law enforcement to be there? And
I'll let you have a little bit of leeway to see if this relates up, but so far it's not. Go ahead.
Okay. And I wanted to be sure that I was clear that law enforcement was at the institution prior to the escape.
They weren't there prior to the escape. They were notified immediately after we as in the facility of the escape. They were notified, and then after their notification, they reported to the facility to begin their investigation.
And so the search of the vehicle, that was entirely done by correctional officers. Is that part right?
It was, because we had brought our connection or thought that she may be implicated into this potential escape, and law enforcement did, question her, but they did not want to search the vehicle at that time. So we felt that we needed to do it, and the warden, who has that authority to give that permission, gave us permission to do so. Ms. Zimdahl allowed us willingly to do so, and we found that evidence, and as soon as we became aware of it, then we obviously turned that over to law enforcement as well.
Okay. I understand. And based on your knowledge and understanding of the security procedures at the Columbia Correctional Institution, who would Warden Novak have notified? Who was Warden Novak's superior at that time?
Assistant Administrator Doug Percy.
Okay. And do you believe that he was notified of the issue with the kitchen worker prior to the escape?
Objection, lacks personal knowledge.
No, I do know that he was notified.
Were you present when he was notified, or were you on any kind of communications where he was notified?
Excuse me, Judge, I just got to make the objection here, and so we can all be clear on what's going on, because so he's objecting to the fact this gentleman is not being allowed to give his answer. What's happened is Mr. Mullenbach is giving his interpretation that he's saying that this witness doesn't have this information to do it, and then you're sustaining it without actually having the knowledge of whether or not he has personal knowledge. So I just asked him if he had belief, and we can get into whether he has personal knowledge. But
I was asking him questions to get that foundation, but you go right ahead, but make sure we get that foundation before we get any answers.
Great. So we're clear. Do you have direct knowledge that DOC management above Warden Novak was notified about the kitchen employee prior to the escape?
Yes, I do. And I have that direct knowledge because I was in Miss Novak's office at the time. Prior to the escape, we received knowledge of potential fraternization by Miss Holly Zimdahl with an inmate or inmates in the kitchen that was occurring. We obtained that information from one inmate.
Okay, I'm getting confused now, time frame wise. Is this a discussion that was occurring after the escape or a discussion that occurred before the escape?
This was a discussion that occurred prior to the escape.
Okay, then time frame, set the time frame, Mr. Cross.
Okay. When did you have this conversation with Mr. Percy?
I'm going to say a week to maybe 10 days before the escape. There was a conversation making him aware that we received information of a potential staff fraternization, the staff member being Holly Zimdahl, with an inmate that was occurring in the kitchen. He was made aware of that at the time, just so